Alright, this week I'm going to be talking a little bit about the recent elections in Northern Ireland. It seems as though largely the media has not really paid much attention to what's going on over there. It's a relatively small part of the United Kingdom, so I guess the political situation over there isn't of a huge amount of interest to the majority of news outlets and political groups within this country. And in particular, the political situation there completely differs from anywhere else in the UK. They have entirely different sets of political parties standing, and their representatives are elected in an entirely different way. And I guess they didn't want to try and wade through all of that complicated confusion in order to just say that basically the result of the election was slightly different to what it was last time. For the last quite a few elections in a row, basically the entirety of the last 2 decades, the same two parties have been elected to have roughly the same share of representatives in the Northern Ireland Assembly, in the same order. The largest party is still the largest, the second largest is still second, and third and fourth place have just barely swapped over, and that's basically what happened. That's all the news that you would get from the overall results. And of course there's more to it than that. The Democratic Unionist Party, the largest political party in Northern Ireland, has dropped to about the lowest share of the vote that it's had in quite a few years, and also the lowest representation it has in the Northern Ireland Assembly. Effectively what has happened is that the DUP was the party that was responsible for the breakdown in the existing coalition and the need for a new election to take place. Various issues coming up to do with the way in which the party is run, disagreements between its overall leadership and the various other political groups in Ireland at the time. And this, alongside other long-standing issues, have conspired to cause their share of the vote to drop significantly. They were literally a few hundred votes ahead of the second place party, which is something that just doesn't happen in Northern Ireland. The situation that they have effectively is that they have 2 main parties that support remaining part of the UK and 2 main parties that support joining the Republic of Ireland instead, plus a 5th party that covers different political stances and generally stays away from the whole issue of which country they should be in. The problem that they're having at the moment is that both parties that want to remain within the UK are quite strongly right-wing leaning in their political opinions. Effectively, one of the parties is the more or less just the Conservative Party operating under a different name. They are supported by the same people. They are effectively working alongside the Conservatives in government at the moment. The other party, the DUP, has pretty much the same political opinions, and generally if you are living in Northern Ireland and you support being part of the United Kingdom, as the vast majority of Northern Irish people at the moment do, but you have somewhat left-leaning political opinions, then you're in a bit of a difficult position on who to vote for. You would either need to choose a right-wing conservative political group or a political faction that supports separating from the UK and joining the Irish Republic instead. And it's a choice between one of those two, and at the moment it's leaning slightly more towards voting for the centrist or socialist factions that are supporting the Irish Republic rather than the Conservative faction supporting the United Kingdom. At the moment, the Unionist Party, the DUP, is still the largest, but by the smallest amount that has ever been the case in Northern Irish history. It's a possibility that they may be looking at moving towards a referendum on joining the Republic of Ireland. If that vote were to take place, it is almost certain that they would vote to remain in the UK. But the fact that such a vote could be considered at this point should be quite considerable and shocking news, especially given that Scotland is looking to also have the same referendum on leaving the UK. Of course, the two are quite considerably different. In Northern Ireland there is a much stronger support for the UK, but if they were to leave they would join another larger, already prosperous country, whereas Scotland would be going off entirely on its own as an independent nation and would need to be able to survive based on its own merits and its own relatively small economy that would potentially be in a position where they would be entirely reliant upon the oil revenue that they would be getting in that may not be sufficient. Hence they're in a situation where they would very much like to go on their own, but aren't sure they would be able to, whereas Northern Ireland wants to stay with us, but if they did leave, then they would actually be quite prosperous and successful without us. And of course, the overall, the main media outlets, newspapers, political organisations and so on have paid relatively little interest to this. And, well, the actual result is basically the same as it was last year. But there's been some shifting in parties losing votes, parties gaining votes, that suggests that this may be a slow, gradual move towards a change in Northern Irish politics. And of course it helps to highlight the fact that if you are a left-leaning pro-UK voter in Northern Ireland, you're in a rather difficult position on who exactly you should be voting for. I'd like to see the Northern Irish Alliance Party, which support centre-left liberal policies without the awkward baggage of which country they want to see the region be part of, gain support as a result that at the moment they are getting few enough votes that any additional votes for them would be seen as taking support away from one side or the other of the larger parties, and therefore they would very much struggle to actually build upon their relatively minimal success recently.